Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to this video. So I wanted to come in and add this little disclaimer. When I was recording this video, for some reason my camera cut off in the middle of the video, so it came to an abrupt stop. But I still wanted to put this video out because it was some really good examples of encounters that is not pretty much straightforward. I had some inquiries that I had to send to providers. There was some codes that was not picked. That was the correct code. And some of the encounters also like jogged my memory on some tips that I wanted to give to some of my fellow coders and billers. So I decided to publish this video anyway. So forgive the abrupt stop, but like I said, I thought it was some really good examples, so I wanted to go ahead and put this out for you guys anyway. So I hope you enjoy. Hi. Today is one of those I don't want to be on camera days, but since I'm coding my favorite specialty today and I'm working from home, I decided let me film my at home portion of my hybrid work day. So here we are. So I'm going to blur out the rest of this video because, PHI and whatnot and HIPAA. But I just wanted to see my face, to see that it's really me coding behind here. And I'm going to talk you through some of my charts as I'm coding and give you some of the, things I have to do. So my criteria is about 10 to 15 charts per hour. And that's it. My providers drop their own codes. I'm working more as a high level auditor, whereas I just verify that they pick the correct codes and the most specific diagnosis codes, the MUEs, the, insurance that's populated in the system, and, everything that the documentation is required for a psychotherapy session is documented, and then I send it on, and that's pretty much what I'm looking for when I'm, coding these charts. So I'm gonna talk you through a few of them. I'm gonna sit here and yeah, we'll go from there. So like I say, blurred. Okay, so this first chart is for family therapy, and the provider picked one diagnosis that they were addressing on this visit. The time for and if you ever wanted to know where you find psychotherapy, um, the psychotherapy course is in the medicine section of the CPT book. It's usually towards the front of the medicine section because they're mostly the codes that start with the 9 O's, 908s, 90, you know, sevens, stuff like that. So anyway, but this provider said that they had a family session and they addressed one diagnosis, and they did good with their start and their stop times. The people that was present in the session, they only documented that it was just the patient. So right then and there, that lets me know it's either the wrong code that they picked, the wrong CPT code, or they did not complete the documentation. So we keep that in mind, and we want when we send inquiries to doctors to ask them to review a note or whatever. You want to make sure that you address as many questions in that encounter that you have in the same email, the same inquiry, because you don't want to send like multiple emails on the same chart. It gets too confusing. So just go through the chart and make sure everything that you need is there. So like the plan is there, the treatment goals is there. When they updated it last, their signature is there. And this was a in office visit, so all that, the date, everything else that's required is here except for, it's either not the right CPT code or not the right documentation for the people that's present. So I'm going to send an inquiry to the provider, and I'm just going to ask them. I'm just going to point out so I sent the inquiry to the provider asking if they would either review the CPT code that they picked or if they will review the note, and addend the note to reflect the actual the actual family members or whatever the group that was present in the session. So I'm going to go ahead and create my follow-up so that I can make sure that I um, can get back to this chart whenever the provider responds. And that's pretty much it for that chart. Okay, so for this next chart, they picked the CPT code of an hour session for a single person, and they pretty much, let's see, they have the date, the dates match, the insurance is cool. The time, the start and stop time, they have it documented, but it doesn't quite meet the criteria to bill out for an hour session. They have that they started at one time and ended 40 minutes later. And they picked the 90837. 90837 supports 53 minutes at least. But it's the 60-minute code for psychotherapy. So that's not correct. But they have everything else here. They have the treatment plans and the goals and the signatures and whatnot, everything else that they looked at. Um, the CPT code that they have, the diagnosis code that they have picked for they documented does not match the diagnosis code that was dropped for the claim. So I just needed to adjust that. But because I have to query this doctor anyway, I'm just going to ask them about, the diagnosis code as well, because that's everything that I have a question about for this encounter. So again, I'm sending an inquiry, just asking them, can they review either the time or the CPT code? And if they can, give me advice or more clarity on a diagnosis. Okay, so this next chart, the provider picked 45 minutes, and they said they addressed 2 diagnoses. And let's see if the documentation is correct. So they have their date, of course, so we're verify that we're looking at the right claim, the right provider, the right patient. They said that they spent 50 minutes with the patient, which falls in line with the criteria of to bill out 90834. 90834 is at most 52 minutes that you can bill for. So that's cool. And they have the correct diagnosis that they say that they addressed during the encounter. And they have all the other criteria that they need, as far as the plan treatment goes, signature, and, everything else that is required for psychotherapy notes. So this is a good claim. It was an in-person visit, so it doesn't need any modifiers. The insurance is cool, so we just go ahead and submit that. And so now this next one is for an hour session. The doctor states that they addressed 2 diagnoses during this visit. Only one dropped in like the system, so I just have to add the second one. The code, the date of service, and all that good stuff is correct. The doctor, the date, the patient. They say that they spent about 58 minutes with the patient. That falls in line with the criteria to bill 90837. And they have everything else that they need here. That's correct for the patient and for the clean claim. This was an in-office visit. No modifier is needed. I just need to add my second diagnosis pointer so that that the CPT code is covering both of those diagnoses, and then I go ahead and get it out the door. So those of us that are trying to become a biller, I just want to like kind of show you what how the coders affect the billers. So the last claim that I just did, that may be familiar with billers that have to ensure as if the diagnosis pointers are all pointing at the right CPT code. And the reason why we always say that if you have like a mistake once, especially in the coding world, you can have a mistake once or maybe twice, but you should not keep making that mistake, is because it goes through so many checks. Like, I check it, the coders check it, the doctor's supposed to put all the diagnosis down. If they don't catch it, the coders should catch it, and if the coders don't catch it, the scrubbers should catch it. If the scrubbers don't catch it, the billers should catch it, and their scrubbers should catch it. So it has so many, stops that it makes before it actually get to the claims, to the actual insurance company, that hopefully something should catch it if all the systems are working properly. But that's just something that, like I say, is real closely related with coding and billing. Okay, so for this next claim, the provider says that they spent 45 minutes with the patient. They only address one diagnosis, and they got everything here that is needed. Now, sometimes I don't trust myself, like, especially when I am calculating start and stop times. Like, the ones that's like on the dot is pretty clear cut to me, like on the half hour, the quarter, whatever. But sometimes it's not, and sometimes I just feel like I get brain farts and I don't want to calculate it, so I go to a time calculator, and it lets me know if what how many minutes they spent. So this particular provider picked a 45-minute code. She picked 90834, and they documented that they were in session for 58 minutes. So I have to send an inquiry on this one and just ask if the time is correct, or if the CPT code is correct. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm just letting them know that they submitted 90834, but that the documentation supports 90837 to be billed based on the time documented. And please let me know if you will addend the time, or if we should addend the CPT code. And then that's basically it. And then I'll send up my follow-up, set my follow-up dates, and come back to it when she responds. So this next encounter says that it was a family therapy visit, and one diagnosis was addressed. I saw the patient for at least 16 minutes. This code, you have to, I think it's 16 minutes. Hold on, no, it's 26 minutes. So this code, they have to see the patient for at least 26 minutes, which that was met. Um, Let me see, the people that was in the therapy session that makes it a true family therapy session, is documented. Everything else is documented. This was an in-person visit, so no modifiers needed. So this one was cool. It goes out the door. Anyway, so this next visit was also a family therapy visit, and they were addressing one diagnosis. And let's make sure everything is correct. Date, start, stop times look good. The people that attended the session is good. The diagnosis is there. The plan, all the documentation that the doctor needs to notate is there. The signature is all good. In-person visit, no modifier needed. So that one is good too. So this one states that they was in an hour session, and it was an individual session, and this one addressed quite a few diagnoses, but only one of them came across in the system. So I would just add the diagnoses that did not come across in the system, and that's cool. And then I will go ahead and make sure all the other criteria is met. And once I double check that, I'll either determine if I need to inquiry the provider on a question that I have, or if I could send it out the door. So date good, patient name good, doctor, provider good, time spent is documented good, 53 minutes, people that's in the session good, all the diagnosis I added, the plan, blah blah blah. The signature is good. In-person visit, no modifiers. So now I just have to make sure I add all the diagnosis pointers to be correct. And yeah, we can go and get that out the door because insurance is cool. All right, so this one is also an hour session, and let's see, again, the diagnosis hasn't all dropped. Quite a few diagnoses was addressed in this visit. Only one of them came across in the system, so it's no problem. I'll go ahead and add all the other diagnoses. And then once I do that, I go ahead and go through my little mini audits, my little checks and balances, and make sure that everything that I need as far as what CPT says that I need to build this code is there. So patient, date, time, start, stop times is documented. That's cool. People that was in there, that's cool. They also say they had an interpreter. Now, we used to have a big thing in behavioral health that just because there was an interpreter in the room, a lot of the therapists and the doctors wanted to build interactive complexity for the interpreting services. I have a video on interactive complexity billing that I am going to insert in this video so that you can look at that if you don't know what's the right instances you should build interactive complexity. Interactive complexity is very much a very valid charge that you can add on to a session, but is certain criteria that has to be met in order for you to be able to build that code. And having just an interpreter for the sole purpose that the doctor speaks or the provider speaks one language and the patient speaks another language is not the criteria to build interactive complexity, because every patient is entitled to that, and that is not an extra fee that is added to the patient. It's part of the complete care of the patient. So but that's neither here nor there. But this provider did not drop an interactive complexity code, which is perfect. And everything else is good in here. It's an in-office visit, no modifiers, the insurance and everything is good. So we're going to go ahead and get this claim out the door. Claim pretty much was perfect. I wish the system picks up the diagnosis codes that's addressed, but it didn't. So for this one, they said this one is this provider is able to build an E&M code. So E&M codes, you have to either build based off of time or based off of leveling. If you didn't watch my last video, my dermatology video, I kind of showed you my auditing tool to level for my E&M services. But a lot of my therapy, because they're so used to billing on time for their psychotherapy codes, they just choose to bill on time with their E&M business as well. You do have some therapists that likes to level. So you have to be very much knowledgeable of E&M coding in order to know if it's not visible, apparent, which criteria the provider decides they want to use. When you bill on time, in the old days, it used to be very apparent because they had to have a statement that says, at least 50% of this time was based on counseling the patient, and the other part was based on the care of this patient. With the new updates for the E&M, 50% of the time doesn't have to be in counseling anymore. It's their total time now. So they don't care if it was counseling or they don't care if you was actually treating an ailment. You can bill on time anyway, but you have to have the time documented. And it's tricky with behavioral health because they're used to having to document their start and stop time. Actually, is required for they plan and everything that they have their start and stop times. But sometimes they won't even take that into account when they pick their code. They base it on leveling the amount of medical decision making that they have to do in this visit. In this particular provider, because I'm been her coder, I'm familiar with it. I know that usually when she drops her E&M visits, she's billing it based on the amount of work that she does. So for this particular claim, or encounter. She addressed 3 diagnoses. 2 of them carried over. I just had to add the extra one. She also addressed and adjusted medication. This patient is on some long-term medication, so she also addressed that. And she did her, basic E&M stuff that she has to do, like, her review of systems, like her whole SOAP note. She has her whole SOAP note, her HPI and everything. This was an in-person visit, so she didn't need to drop any modifiers, or it wasn't anything else for this particular insurance company that was needed. And she pretty much got everything here, and this level is good based off of our leveling of E&M services. So she picked a level 4, and that's because she addressed, quite a few diagnoses. She also had to do some medication, stuff. This drug management. This patient is on prescription medication. She needed to assess if she had to adjust the medication, if she needed to discontinue one or add something. So she did address those, and all the other stuff, the complexity of data that she had to review, like she followed all that criteria. We use that against our E&M audit tool, and we audit based on that. So she picked a good level for this visit. So we're going to go ahead and get that out the way. So now this one is new patient intake. And with new patient intakes, it's their initial diagnostic visits. So you either would do a 90791 for a diagnostic new patient visit,